Hello, North-South Connection. This is the top 40 WrestleMania Performers. Number 34 is Bianca Belair. We will discuss her today. My guest, Chrissy Tina. How are you? And are you excited to talk about Bianca Belair?
Hello, darling. Hi, babies. I am doing well, and I'm very, very excited to be talking about Bianca Belair during WrestleMania season.
She's the best. Actually, one of my favorites. Do you have, real quick, when you were told this would be, well, you weren't told, you were asked, this would be who we'd be discussing. What was the first image that popped into your head?
When I was told about doing this with you guys, thank you so much once again for having me on, and that I was allowed to have the grace of speaking of Bianca Belair. I was elated. And the first mental image that came in my mind was the Bianca Belair Sasha Banks WrestleMania match where they both main evented, and it was just something that gave me so much physical joy that I couldn't contain it, where people around me were actually fairly concerned for whether or not I was all right. But I'm 100% excited to be talking about Bianca.
It's a great moment. Mine's a little different. We'll talk about it in a sec. But we'll go through her resume. We're not going to really mention the Battle Royal. That was pre-show. That doesn't count. 36. There's no fans. That whole year doesn't count. But she did come out and appear and help out the Street Profits. Then, her first WrestleMania, number 37. She wins the title from Sasha Banks. Her first SmackDown title, her first title in the WWE proper. Tell me about this match to you. Like when you said you loved it, like give me your not quick. Just let me just talk about it.
Well, the importance of this match just on a social aspect is very important. Having it be the first Mania main event with two women of color was something that very, very much spoke to me as a Puerto Rican woman. Being able to know that there are people such as myself, the younger versions of myself, that are able to watch this product and see these two women succeed in the biggest stage of them all in the sport, which is WrestleMania, especially if you're a WWF fan, WWE fan. And it was beautifully done. I've always been a fan of Bianca from NXT days. I have a very strained relationship with Sasha Banks. Sometimes I really enjoy her work. Sometimes she doesn't completely rub me all the way. But this particular match was probably both of their best character work, some of their best athletic work. Sasha has probably never sold better in her career than what she did in this match. I can still hear the crack of Bianca's braid grazing Sasha's stomach and splitting it open. Like, it was such a viscerally satisfying match for me. The amount of time it was given was proper. The everything top to bottom was proper, all the way down to the unscripted moment of Bianca Belair's father almost spilling over the barricade to jump into the ring with her because of just how proud he was of his daughter. It hit all the right marks. It hits entertainment. It hits the emotional aspect. It hits, like the little smarky jerks that watch this kind of content. They want to say that they just want athleticism in their matches. This match had that as well. There's really nothing you can knock about this match, at least in my opinion.
I agree 100%. It was by far the best match of that year that I saw. It was the best match of that WrestleMania. The emotionality of the opening face-off was, take away the wrestling pomp and circumstance of The Rock and Hulk Hogan turning their heads to the right and the left. These two performers, the true emotion that you felt from the crowd to them it's unmatched to me. It just gave Bianca one more thing to overcome. She had to overcome her emotions. She is she's a rookie essentially, and she had to do that. The hair whip was such a great thing because Sasha used the hair the whole match, and then that final that time that Bianca whips her with it. It wasn't just a random whip, like this was pent up. This was such a frustrating thing that led to the finish essentially too. You mentioned Sasha selling. Bianca was taking a beating to her ribs, her back the whole match. Sasha was very vicious. It really is an amazing match, and it's one of those matches that kind of transcends wrestling. You're right. When you talk about being a person of color, or like you could mention Mr. T, you could mention LT. It wasn't really till a wrestler, The Rock was the first person of color to main event. And that was 15. It didn't really happen again until Batista after that, and then Roman. It was just such a special thing to have that. And yeah, I agree with you. And it's one of my favorite moments in wrestling history. I put it up there with Andre Hogan, with any of the Austin matches, Daniel Bryan winning, like
Mhm.
it's just a great match. And yeah, man, I loved it. I'm glad you like it as much as I do. And do you think it was easily the best match of that WrestleMania?
In my personal opinion, yeah.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion, yeah. It was that perfect kind of crescendo of the storyline being as good as it was, down to the gear that each of the women wore, down to the video package that showed beforehand, down to just the little like minute details, just when that magical moment that everything clicks and sparks at the right time. You don't very often get that in wrestling. Sometimes certain things work, sometimes certain things don't, and then you got to kind of make it work with whatever you have left over. But this one match had everything going at the same time, and it just worked so well that I have no notes. I have no notes.
And if you really want to do, like, I often think, like, when I see a match and I think it's great, much like a movie or music or anything, it's like something I've never seen before happens, right? The catching Sasha, body pressing her and walking up the stairs was a moment that I've never seen it again, and never saw it before that. I've been watching wrestling for a long time. Like, just a moment like that that's just so singular to that match. It was just incredible, and that's a thing. That's a big moment, So these ratings we're going to look at real quick: 4.44, 3 and a 3.75. Those are insanely low. It's a 5-star match if there's ever been a 5-star match, if you ask me.
Absolutely agree.
Hell yeah. All right. We're going to go to number 38, WrestleMania 38. Bianca wins a title again, her second Mania match for a title, and she wins again. This is coming off of, her 6-second loss at SummerSlam, turning big time Beck's heel. A really big moment for Becky's character and Bianca's struggle to come back from it, right? So, once again, we'll talk about the beginning of the match, the entrance. One of the cooler musical entrances. People get all excited for Motorhead and some of these things. Like, this is a marching band of 40 dudes and women, like, coordinated together doing Bianca's music when it finally kicks in. I think that's one of the best entrances that they've done that involves a live music, and it just it's the perfect contrast to Becky's total jerk character. Is this character coming out with this university marching band and just like feeling the crowd? I love that entrance a lot. This match came after Cody and Rollins, if I'm not mistaken, so they had a match with one of the biggest guys in the company in a really hot match, and they come out. They got a lot of shoes to fill, I guess you could say, or a lot expected of them. Once again, she turns it on again. I don't know how you feel. This is another Stone Cold classic from Bianca, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. You said there's an importance when it comes to music and wardrobe in wrestling that I feel like a lot of people kind of put to the wayside. It's very similar to how people tout John Williams as probably one of the best composers to ever do it. Bianca's always been very methodical when it comes to her big match entrances. The importance of having the marching band be made up of HBCU students was completely important to her, and there were people there from her alma mater, and just that semblance of home kind of pushed its way through and made it incredibly special. As you said, it's incredibly well put together. The orchestration of her theme music works as a big band piece, so it just made sense all the way through. And like you said, it was a really good home rooted contrast to Becky's kind of like Bowie like Ziggy Stardust-esque a gear and attire, and her big ridiculous VR Titantron thing that they always showed at the beginning of her matches that I hated. Just that big moment of it's the big bad versus the underdog. And for Bianca at that point in her career to be seen as an underdog showed just how good Becky was at that point as well. So the importance for the match for both of these women was incredible. And they put on an instant classic, as you said, to the point where they had no choice but to show each other respect after the match. that's how good it was.
Once again, that seemed like true emotion that was not scripted to happen. That came through in terms of like, holy shit, we just did it, man. We did it. That the story of redemption, right? Like she got humiliated at SummerSlam. That was definitely a humiliating thing to happen to her as a person who prides himself on being the best. You know, that's her thing. And Becky got one over on her, and Becky was able to run around with the belt and taunt her for a while. She finally got her chance, and the hero's journey, she came through. And like you're saying about the John Williams is a good comp, because people could say, well, the match is the match and the moves and all that dumb shit that people take, but like, you cannot take a movie and say, well, that movie wouldn't be good without the score, or that, because everything is a part of the thing. Every piece of art is a piece of the final product. So the entrance is just as important as the match and as the end of the match, and the gear and the music. Like, all that stuff is a part of the grand scheme of how you should be taking these things in, and your own emotional state and your own life, like, and Bianca's been able to, and we'll get to it in the next match, have so many emotional things that tie to, at least me personally, emotionally, and connect to me emotionally as a fan of wrestling, but just as a person who loves art and loves people and loves to, and can find a character and a human and want to follow that person for a long time. So, and
absolutely
to talk about the match, I mean, shit, this match starts off insane. Becky is going nuts. They do a callback to the quick pin. This is like a Ric Flair versus Sting, if you ask me. This is the veteran and the up-and-coming powerhouse, and I love the way this match starts. And this match doesn't stop. This is a 20-minute match. I love the in-ring action of this. It is nonstop with Beck and just going for any move she can. She's desperate. And I don't know, you didn't really talk about the match too much, but I'm sure, like, is it the type of match you would have expected from them, or did you really think they brought it to a new level that I didn't expect?
Yeah, they both absolutely showed different levels of character work that I didn't think Becky would be able to reach. But there were certain points in that match where you see Becky, like you could see her mentality start to break. You can see the tears form in her eyes. You can see the breath catch in her throat. You can see the frustration, the pain, the panic of, am I going to be able to win this? You can see Bianca begin to become more manic, more bloodthirsty, more driven to get Becky down. It's not a want anymore. It's a necessity. It's a need. It's like coming up out of the water for air. You need it. And you felt that. At least I did. And I know that the people in my home, I have a very, very rambunctious group of wrestling people around me. And my friend was so into this match that he was holding a bottle of beer and he squeezed it so hard that the glass broke. That's how much energy these women were able to not only, I can only imagine how overstimulating it must have felt being in the arena that night. Like, it was so palpable through the screen that I can only imagine how emotionally exhausted the crowd was after everything. I would have needed a cigarette. Ridiculously so. These women put literally every ounce of their DNA into that mat. And that's what all the official wrestling fans say that they want. They want them to leave it all out there. These women, Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair, are automatically going to be seen as some of the greatest to ever do it, just based off of these styles of performances. And no one can really deny that. You want emotion, they had it. You want character work, they do it. You want them to be able to do comedy bits, they do that. They do everything. Literally, her gimmick is being the best, the EST, and it suits her in a way that it has not suited anyone else, either male or female or otherwise.
And
no one can touch her like that.
And it's not a braggadocious being the best. It's a person that is a super athlete who just, because her character is still humble and for the people, for lack of a better term, like, just, she's just a genuinely seems like a great person, and her character seems like that too. I mean, once she goes heel, man, that's going to be such a monster. That is going to be.
I'm actually very excited.
Oh my God, it's going to be great. But once again, too, like, stuff that, like, truly memorable moments that inside the match, like the stuff they were doing on the outside, they were just, once again, Bianca attacks like the ring steps, and the way she gives like a suplex on the outside, like actually throwing her legs up, not just the brutality of this match was also just perfect. And The finish, once again, was so great with the flip, going to get the Superman, a pump manhandle slam, flipping over, hitting the KOD. The KOD was beautiful on this night. She went in the air. It was, once again, great match. On a match that had a bomb of, in my opinion, the main event of Roman Brock was terrible, if you ask me. This blew it out of the water. This is what those guys couldn't hold a candle to this match. The only match that could even come close on this Mania was maybe Austin Owens. That's a nostalgia thing. Watching it back today, I watched this. This match is, once again, I don't know how you could say it's not a perfect match. All right. Let's see. What do we got rating here? 4.5 from Meltzer, 4.25 Can, 3.75 Aaron. Once again, he's on crack. Meltzer, I don't like the fact that I'm even close to that guy, but I mean, I guess it's a dumb, like, broken clock could be right twice, and a dumb fuck could be right every once in a while. So, let's go to number 39, the most recent one. This match had the hardest slot, I think, of any of these matches we're talking about. It came after the three-way Intercontinental title. By the way, this is retaining her title against Asuka at 39, right? The most crazy banger match that everyone loved at WrestleMania. What happens after it? Asuka and Bianca have to have their match. This is a feud. Asuka had a great run. She came back at the Rumble, won the Elimination Chamber. Her and Bianca's feud was cool. It maybe went a little too long. I love Asuka. She's one of my all-time favorites as well. She turns on Bianca, and that sets this up. And there's a lot of mind games and misting and stuff. So it I didn't love the how they were going into this. And then they have to go up against that match after that match. And the crowd normally would be dead, right? Like, that's the whole thing. And they composed a match that was perfectly set to win the crowd back. Like, they didn't go out, like, if they had started the match like Becky and Asuka and Bianca did the year before, I don't think it would have worked as well. This was a match that started slow, and just the crowd just all of a sudden maybe were leaning back at first, and then by the end of the match they're on their feet. Like, it drew the crowd in with how it was worked, and they were it's so perfect the way they did it. And this is the maturity of Bianca getting to that point that she can do that and not maybe try too hard at the beginning, like, and Asuka's such a ring general. But I'm going to start with the entrance. Now, we talked about the entrances before. This is the greatest entrance in WrestleMania history.
I love it. I love it so much.
This is the best in wrestling history, if you ask me. It is, if you don't have emotion when you're watching it, if you don't feel something, you just stop watching anything and just go into a closet and don't ever leave it, because you're not a human.
Like, Bianca's for the kids, baby. You can't say nothing else about it. Before we knew just how emotionally taxing that entrance was, when it was just all fun and games and it was a local all-girl dance troupe doing Bianca's entrance, it was absolutely amazing. The spot with her and the small little girl in the front, the girls walking her down, them giving them the shout out in Bianca's WrestleMania entrance intro. Amazing. To have Mania end and to have Triple H in the media scrum tell us that one of the young dancers, her parent had passed away that day, I believe. And that small girl had to make the very adult decision of what she wanted to do, and she didn't want to ruin that moment for her troupe. And Bianca was there to make sure that they were okay. Just on a real life spectrum, you can't beat that entrance. Just based off of the power and showing of, like, the human spirit that it kind of represents, both for those young ladies and for Bianca. And then just having it tie in once again to, at that point in Bianca's title reign, she was for the people. And what more of a way can you show that you're for the people than having that style of entrance? So once again, showing that even just the smallest details matter. Bianca would know all about that because she consistently makes her own ring gear. She knows that those details matter. And when it's big match moments like that, sometimes you got to take care of them yourself. You can't entrust it to anybody else. She's meticulous. She is the Beyonce of wrestling. No one's going to tell her no, because if they do, she's going to do it herself. And I have that much of immense respect for Bianca for that. Asuka is Kana, one of the best women's wrestlers in history. Her pedigree with what she's done in Japan, all around the world, to what she's been doing in WWE can't be touched by most, including men. And the fact that Bianca had evolved, as you said, to be a style of athlete that could work in a match with Asuka the way that they did, as you said, once again, the fact that it started off slow because they knew that the crowd was burnt out from the previous match. They're not dumb. They knew that they were going to have to slowly wait for them to kind of come out of that fog to eventually be able to really appreciate what they were doing. And I was one of those people who was burnt out. And I love Bianca and I love Asuka, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be able to get me back. And as she consistently does, Bianca proves people wrong and is still able to deliver a very amazing match. Is it one of her best? No. But for this match to be not one of her best still says something, because it was still a very well-worked match for Asuka as well. This is the night that she won her, well, not won, but this is the night that she broke the record for longest title reign.
I guess it would have been a year, right? So, yeah, I mean, like you could say, like, it's weird to talk a little pejoratively about something that's awesome, because it's still awesome. It's still a great match. But just when you're comparing it to those two things, but also like, so it's weird to say that way. And still, to me, it's I don't know, I liked it better than the main event of night 2 anyway. So, yeah, and when you're watching that and you see like the entrance as well, it's also like emblematic of people who maybe don't get why things like Sasha and Bianca was so important. And maybe if you fast forward to 39, you go, oh, well, that's someone that those people go, that looks like me. Maybe I could do that. And then you see a whole group of people that are feeling that and doing that and living a dream and saying like, oh, like a role model can do that much, and that's the importance of this character that we've only seen for 3 WrestleManias. And it's like a perfect resume. Like, what else do you want for your first 3 WrestleManias? I don't know if there's a person who has 3 title matches in their first WrestleManias. I did not do my homework.
It's kind of intimidating. It's a little terrifying just to know that this is her kind of barely getting started, because she's, I'm going to be completely candid, at this particular time, she's in a little bit of a lull. But even in her lull stages, she's still doing some incredible work. And just to know that she's barely getting started, I'm incredibly excited to see what else she has coming down the pipeline.
Right. I agree. When you say number, if we're going to talk about this, I'm looking at like our little template here, and it's like, I don't know. There's nothing on this person's WrestleMania that hurts them. There's no negatives. It's just the only reason she's 34 is because she's only had 3 matches, I'm assuming, right? But there's, when you're going to do the longevity, but like there's some dudes who have some all-timers who also have matches against Jimmy Snuka and Ken Kong Bundy and, Giant Gonzalez, who are higher on this list, but I've never had to suffer through that crap when I'm watching a Bianca match, and I know I never will. So, all right, do you think we did her justice? This person that we seem to both mutually think is awesome.
I feel like no matter what we say, we will never be able to do Bianca Belair as much justice as she deserves, because at the end of the day, she is the EST for a reason, and we are just mere plebeians that bask in her glory, bask in her light, and I'm just here to be a big old mark when it comes to her. I have no notes. I have no qualms. I have no issues. She is absolute perfection. 34, as you said, in my personal list, she would be in top 10 easy. But we're going based off of what is in front of us right now. But once again, hopefully we're able to visit this kind of list again in a few more years. And I know for a fact that Bianca will absolutely jettison up the list, because that's the only kind of work that she puts forward.
I can't say it any better. Well, if you want to hear someone who's very intelligent, obviously, because she likes Asuka and Bianca, and where else can people hear you talk about wrestling?
Well, darlings, my name is Chrissy Tina once again. You can find me on all social media platforms as Chrissy Tina. I do the brunt of my work on TikTok. I do a podcast with my best friend, James Stephen Beery, Wrestling with Friends. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the major places. If you click the link in any of my bios, I do NXT Rewinds on Saturdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TikTok, where I work with talented people such as this gentleman right here and Richie Mars and Jace Fox and other amazing people. And we just watch NXT and talk about it because it makes us happy, because life sucks and sometimes you got to find a coping mechanism.
If you want another coping mechanism, you can check out my band. You can see the name underneath, Chained to the Dead, on all streaming platforms and YouTube feed as well. Stay tuned for number 33. Who's it going to be? I don't know, but it won't be the EST.
North-South Connection, welcome back to the latest installment of NoSo's greatest WrestleMania Performers. I'm Marcus. That's Chatty Be Bad. Sorry, Chad, I don't know if you like that or not. I was trying to think of something for Georgia, man. But I'm happy to be doing a project with you. I super respect your opinion, man. I love listening to you on Wrestling Warzone. I've been listening to you for a long time. So it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do something cool with you here.
Yeah, and we picked an interesting guy to discuss here. Somebody I wouldn't say is too synonymous to WrestleMania, but as you look at his resume here on the screen, he certainly has a lot of great matches. It's just he's one of many in most of them. So.
Sure. I don't know how you kind of weight these things. I try to think of it as like, can I imagine this guy not in the match? I have a hard time imagining Christian not in a lot of these matches. I feel like he is the glue guy in a lot of these matches. How do you feel?
Yeah, that was the exact term I was going to use for 16 and 17, especially the triangle ladder match and then the TLC. I think most of the spectacular spots, especially at TLC, go to other competitors. But as far as keeping everything together, being the glue, like you stated, he plays a pivotal role in that. And even in like the Money in the Bank on WrestleMania 25, I watched that semi recently, and he was integral in that too, kind of in his later era.
Well, that kind of brings us to our first question here that everybody's answering on the project. WrestleMania is more so about the moments now than even as like the matches or who wins or loses. So when you close your eyes, and when we were giving Christian, if you just close your eyes, what's the WrestleMania moment, or what do you envision Christian doing at WrestleMania? Like, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
It's probably him and Edge winning TLC, if I had to guess one thing, or I'll give you a sneaky second one. Him and Trish making out at WrestleMania 20. That may actually be my number one, because you picture that like when they go up the aisle and are right at the entrance and are playing tonsil hockey as the end of that match.
Yeah, that's a great moment. It's a great swerve, bro, that like nobody saw coming. And it's like a really big moment for what was kind of upper mid card match on a really stacked WrestleMania. It's really cool they have that big moment to anchor that whole segment. My moment that I think about is actually him taking the Dudley dog off of the apron at WrestleMania 17 from Spike Dudley, and just like the precision it took to pull that off. And him being like willing to bump for the littlest guy who's not even in the match. I feel like that just kind of sums up Christian. He's going to do whatever needs to be done, and he's going to do it. And I feel like that kind of encapsulates Christian. So like we have WrestleMania 2000, his WrestleMania debut is the triangle ladder match with his tag partner Edge versus the Hardys and Dudleys. Of course, that's for the tag titles. That's pretty much 4.25 across our board here. Are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, so I'm actually one of the ones that was represented on this average. And I think you'll see, so to be like a, spreadsheety star rating guy, just for ladder matches, I have a little bit of a disconnect with actually like star rating these more kind of spectacular spot fest heavy ladder matches. It's aesthetically not my favorite style of match. So even like one of the best iterations of it, which I think is the TLC 2, you'll see that I have that at 4.25. I know that ratings from about 2 or 3 years ago. I do feel like I've gotten slightly more lenient since that time, I was pretty grouchy right in the heat of COVID, so I was still, Mr. Serious Wrestling fan as far as star ratings. But yeah, probably 4.5 now if I had to, retrospectively. But yeah, I mean, I think on most of these, like, I feel pretty good with my rankings, here and there on those. But a lot of people have 16 and 17 at 5 stars. I know that. Like, that's, I don't think, a hot take. Canton, who we have represented here, he does have the TLC at 5 stars. Even Big Dave himself went 4 3/4, so he's right, knocking on the door. So I think TLC 2 a lot. I may be lower even at 4.5 than most, but I still think it's a spectacular match.
Yeah, I think of the WrestleMania 2000 ladder match as maybe Welcome to the Jungle, right? Like it's a classic song that I never want to hear again. But for me, TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17, that's patience. Like I will listen to that song a million times in a day if I can. It's absolute perfection, and I find it extremely rewatchable. Of course, we go down. We got him versus DDP for the European title at WrestleMania 18. That's kind of whatever. You have it at 2 1/4. We get WrestleMania 20, like you talked about with Jericho. That's 3.5 across the board here. Then WrestleMania 21, the Money in the Bank ladder match. The first one is 4 1/4 from you, 4.5 from the other two gentlemen chipping in here. I find this one to also be, when I went back and watched it for War with JT right here on NoSo, I was like blown away. I didn't expect to go 5 on it, and it was incredible. But I think it's a ladder match. It still really holds up. And I really like about this one is like this Money in the Bank ladder match is like physical. It's really, really physical. And I think they tell a good story with like the war of attrition almost to get to the briefcase.
Yeah, I watched that one literally about 2 weeks ago when I rewatched WrestleMania 21, and I'm looking right now. I went for 4.5, 9 out of 10 on my 10 scale. So that got a little bit of a bump since the last time I watched it, which was from the spreadsheet Ryan pulled these ratings from. So yeah, it was. I mean, I've been watching a lot of the more modern Manias, and so far it's held up as easily the best of Money in the Bank on that 21 through 26 stretch. I mean, I like them all, but it's easily number 1 right now.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then round us out, our last 2 matches are also Money in the Bank ladder matches. 25, like you just talked about, is you have it at 4 1/4. And then the WrestleMania 26, the last installment of Money in the Bank ladder matches at WrestleMania. That, of course, from the Big Toaster in Phoenix. You're 3 3/4 on it. That one he gets like banged up super early in the match, and that's like at the very beginning of like the doctors having to stop matches to like glue cuts and stuff like that. So that kind of probably hurts his performance a little bit, the overall match flow. But a really solid WrestleMania resume. His average star rating is 3.66, which I feel like has got to be really strong, really high up there. Is there anything for you that you think is harming or missing for his case of being higher on this ranking?
I mean, I think it's disappointing that we don't have any later era Christian singles matches. I mean, just in general, like when I think about my greatest wrestler ever list coming up, and Christian's a contender for that in the top
Let's
100.
go.
But most of what really resonates me is actually post all these matches on his resume, like the Orton 2011. I mean, maybe some of the 2010, his ECW stuff like that. So you have some of it, but yeah, I would have loved to have seen like 2011, 2012, a great singles match from Christian. And I think it's something he really could have had a classic WrestleMania. I don't know where you could have slotted him in that. And I can't even remember if he was injured or not. Like, I don't know. Was he injured at 27? I know the Orton feud really fires up after that. So
yeah, so 27, he comes back. He comes back from injury, and he's with Edge at ringside as Edge takes
That's
on Del
right.
Rio to
That's
negate Tyrus. Forget his WWE name. Pre-Funkasaurus. But so yeah, that's what he was doing there. And then at 28, he was supposed to be in the Teddy versus Johnny match, and then he got hurt a couple weeks out. So he gets
Yeah,
replaced
I
in
mean,
that.
even that feels like a little bit of a miss. I mean, I don't know. I struggle with that match. I struggle with that show overall. I think me and you are kind of in solidarity amongst our PTBN brethren and being lower on that show than the consensus. But yeah, I mean, he was really coming off the heater at 2011 to me, it's either him or CM Punk. Like those are the two best wrestlers in that company in that year. So to have him in that multi-man, I don't know. Like I think you could have argued he could have made something great happen versus Punk instead of Jericho. I mean, I don't think that's crazy to think. So I think there's options there. So that would be to me the only disappointing thing. I mean, he's here at number 33. You know, I don't know. I don't have the full list. I know I just did Sheamus recently with Ryan, and that was kind of someone where like Sheamus is ranked lower. But you know, if I had to guess going in, I probably would have Sheamus higher, just based off of last year's 3-way and even the Daniel Bryan thing as far as a moment. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you can understate that Christian was very integral to a lot of these multi-man ladder matches, and WrestleMania really from the 16 triangle ladder match on is pretty synonymous with like one multi-man or you know ladder gimmick like that. They've had those more years than not. It's kind of a trendsetter too.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, he really is the glue guy of all these ladder matches, and you know what ends up being a staple of WrestleMania moving forward, and eventually is so good it gets its own pay-per-view, and becomes a big show for the company. They're trying to make a stadium show. I think they'll get there eventually with it. But what also sticks out for me is right around in the middle here at WrestleMania 20, when he got the opportunity to do something big at WrestleMania, he delivered. And it just goes to show me, like, even though he's got the DDP match at 18, it was what it was. It was where it was at on the card. It was number 2 slotted on the card. So it's not supposed to blow anybody's socks off. But that match with Jericho at 20, when they have the feud, which is even kind of ridiculous looking back at it, they're not given a lot to work with. It's not like they're feuding over a title or anything like that. It's coming out of the $1 Canadian bet. They make the most out of that. So yeah, when he got the chance to really deliver in a one-on-one setting, he does. Would have loved to seen what he could have done in that 2011 era. Also, when he's missing from the company, when he goes to TNA,
Yeah,
you know, he leaves in October or early November of 2005. Man, they really could have used him. I think maybe not so much at WrestleMania. Well, they could use him at WrestleMania 22 because you still get a lot of injuries going into that show. You have Eddie's death, so you have a lot of flux heading into WrestleMania season. And he probably could have helped steady that ship a bit. But yeah, that's a time period where he's missing. I think his absence is felt.
he's really an interesting person to look at because you know some of these. I mean, 17. It depends on what side of the argument you're on, but you know it's either the best or the second best WrestleMania usually for most people, in most people's opinion. And then 20 is a great show, but it's very bloated. And I think the 20 match versus Jericho, as we talked about, I mean, it's 3.5 across the board from the 3 contingents here. That feels like a really good, like, okay, this was a really good match that can like pad out the resume for that show overall. Cause you have the main event, you have Eddie versus Kurt, and then you have the Evolution versus Rock and Sock. And then this is your 4th best match on that show. All right. Like that's 4, you know, as a top 4, that's a strong top 4 there as a resume builder. But yeah, I mean, like 21, 25, 26, those shows are not necessarily like panned, but you know, aren't usually held up as kind of the most fond, memorable manias that you have. So he's kind of, I guess he just, to me, like besides TLC and I guess Money in the Bank, but again, he's one of many in those matches. He just doesn't have that like memorable moment on a real memorable mania that again, even someone like Sheamus has with whatever you think with the Daniel Bryan. Like, there's nothing like that there. But very, very solid resume overall.
Yeah, a solid resume for a really selfless worker. He always gets the best out of whoever he's working with. Chad, hopefully you got the best out of me during this little project here. I really appreciate you taking time to break down Christian's WrestleMania resume with me. And people can catch you where on the NoSo.
So mainly Wrestling Warzone. Me and Justin. When this was released, I think we just have released WrestleMania 13, which is a very fun show to talk about retroactively as well. So that's my main gig these days. What about yourself, Marcus?
Well, we share the third man, JT. We're over at Wrestling Above Replacement WWE style. That is WWE War, where we have a baseball analytic inspired take on the pay-per-view season for WWE, starting with the first pay-per-view after WrestleMania and culminating with that season's WrestleMania. We go through year by year, kind of just pick a random year at a time, a random season at a time, and evaluate on a plus-minus scale. So it's an interesting format, interesting format, and we get some cool results. So thank you, Chad, for your time.
Y'all are on a heater right now. Covered off.
Yeah.
One Night Stand, Vengeance 05, and then SummerSlam 05 coming up. I have a suspicion it'll rank fairly well too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna do well. Spoiler alert. And we end with a really good WrestleMania too, I think. So.
Right.
Looking forward to the culmination of the season. But this is it for us. Wrapping up Captain Charisma. Thank you, everybody.
Hey now, what's up, North-South Connection? Very honored to be back. I had Demolition a few videos ago, and I'm back here today with a new friend, someone I've been reading on the internet for years, and I'm excited to work with him today. Scott Keith, how are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing good. Depending on when this comes out, I may or may not be buried under 6 feet of snow here in Saskatchewan. It's coming up from Montana, apparently. So, yeah.
Okay, nice. I am in Western New York, so I've lived a life where on a Tuesday, it was not unusual for us to go to Canada for Chinese food.
Ah, sweet.
You know, back in the pre-9/11 days, you know, I lived within 10 minutes of 3 different bridges to the Great White North, and lover of all Canadian rock. And when we were 19, we went and partied there because it was, you know, open before we were allowed to drink. We could drink there first. So
that is
excited
true.
to be with you today. One of my favorite wrestler of all time, him and Hulk. These are my guys, Hulk and Steamboat. Long time in the North-South Connection. I have talked about my love for Steamboat many times. I put in a position to have to talk about being there when he lost the Intercontinental title and crying for 45 minutes. But today we get to do the other thing, and that's gush about him winning the title. First, Scott, I want to get a little bit of feel. Where were you 1 through 4? What was your experience like watching these Manias, watching these matches? Did you get to watch them? What was your first one? Like, I became a fan right before 2. So that was a Coliseum video for me. But then by 3, I had a party at home. 4, I went to a buddy's. 25 we'll talk about. But what was it like for you growing up in Canada there with access to these early Manias?
Yeah, we obviously didn't have as much access because there was no pay-per-view in Canada for a while there. Yeah, so much like yourself, I became a fan just before WrestleMania 2. I was a longtime fan of Stampede Wrestling, of course. More like my dad was the main watcher of it, and my mom rented us WrestleMania 2 for my birthday in August of '86. I had friends over who were fans. I still didn't get it. And then that was actually the first wrestling pay-per-view I would have watched was WrestleMania 2. And then I was kind of catching up on TV with my dad, and Paul Orndorff turned on Hulk Hogan, and bam, that's it.
Now you were in because you wanted to be there to defend Hulk, or you were in because you wanted to throw a couple jabs with Paul? Where did you stand?
I wanted to throw the jabs with Paul. I felt like Paul Orndorff was 100% justified in turning on that egomaniac.
Oh, God.
All he had to do was pick up the phone. You know what I'm saying?
Scott, that's a video for another day, but I have a podcast called the 24-inch podcast, so you know where I stand on that just by that. But let's stay focused. Let's stay focused. I still love you, Scott. And by the way, I've read Scott's writing over the years. His answer was not a shock to me there. Well, let's start with 1. Let's start with WrestleMania 1. Steamboat is in one of the early matches. They get 4 minutes and 37 seconds against Matt Bourne, who, of course, will later be Doink. And I think they make great use at the time. I think it's very interesting that it's this match that Meltzer, as you see the star rating here, and if we take out WrestleMania 3 for a second, it's interesting that this, of the other matches, is the one that pops Meltzer. I don't know who Campton is. He gave it 1.5, and our friend Aaron George 2.75. I think 3 or so is fair here. Anywhere probably between Aaron and Meltzer seems fair to me. I thought they did a good job with the time they had. I love watching WrestleMania 1 because I just kind of love the awkward structure of it with, they have poor Alfred Hayes in like no man's land with the wrestlers walking by him and the interviews in the back with Gene. This is a charm to one, I feel like. And I think Bourne does a really good job making Steamboat look great and kind of establishing him as someone who in the WrestleMania era is going to be, a big deal and important. What are your thoughts on the 4 minutes and 30 seconds with Bourne and kind of where you see it historically in a night where Mania was almost there to set the tone for the Manias that would come after it?
Yeah, it was an interesting. I mean, it was an interesting match, right? Matt Bourne had kind of a, when I go back and watch all this stuff now, Matt Bourne had it was kind of a weird fit in WWF at that point, right? Like, he was coming off that strong run in Mid-South, which is another really underappreciated thing that I've been catching up on now with the WWE Network. It's really great. Yeah, he went out there. He was a guy who could kind of be depended on to have a good match. He was, not going to be a star at this point. After the loss to Steamboat, he kind of floated aimlessly as a kind of like an opening match guy for the rest of the year. So, it was not a great showcase for Matt Bourne, obviously, but Ricky Steamboat was somebody you could tell. They're out there. He's being featured at WrestleMania, kind of giving him that star push. The black tights always weirded me out a little bit, though. I always thought, like the ninja look was never going to be something that got him over as a top guy.
I like white and red the best.
White, exactly.
Red next best. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a dispatch. I get 3.25 stars seems a little high to me.
Maybe a little high, a little generous, but you always wonder what his point is. You always felt like he was trying to, like, for example, to give the main event at 3 a -4 or whatever, that he was trolling, right?
Yeah.
So what I wonder why this match, what it was about this match that in 4 minutes and 37 seconds, he's like, I think he just likes Steamboat, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, hey, to be fair, lots of people like Steamboat. He's a great guy. So
yeah, and me being one of the biggest. So perfectly fine. Good start. We go on to WrestleMania 2. I have always said if you can get past the women's match in Chicago, the first match in Chicago, it's a really good show from there. This is in the Los Angeles, which is the strongest of the 3 venues in terms of what they present that night. I think by far it's Hercules Hernandez that he wrestles, and he's still got the Halloween costume on. The hair, the whole get up there,
the cosplay.
We're 3, 2.5 and 3, 2.75 average. I think this is the better of the 2 so far by just a little bit. Like, you just get a little bit more time. Steamboat lays a couple of arm drags in this match that are just like really great. I thought there's some good stuff here. And again, I think it's one of those matches at the back half of this Mania that sort of drags up what was a disastrous start on Long Island. I feel like Chicago and LA, they did enough to pull it up a bit for me, to where it's another one I like watching. I just usually start after that first match in Chicago and go from there. And again, I think this is a very good. I think these first 2 matches go to show you that Steamboat's the kind of guy that you can put with whoever and put it wherever, and he can get you about 3 stars on command like that. I think that's what we see in these first 2. What do you think, Scott, about this?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's a match coming up later that shows that as well. But that's of course, funny story with the Hercules match. It was not supposed to be Hercules. It was supposed to be Bret Hart that was facing Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania.
Scott loves some Bret Hart.
Love me some Bret Hart. Yes, exactly. And they and Vince talked Bret out of it and convinced him to be in the battle royal instead. So this is what we got with Hercules. It was really good. Hey, of course, WrestleMania 2, key piece of my childhood as a wrestling fan, so I've seen it a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it's a good match. Hercules was a solid worker. Ricky Steamboat knew exactly what to do with somebody like that, and they could go out and deliver, like you say, just good, solid 2.5 to 3 star match. No big deal, and everybody comes out of it looking good. So yeah, great.
Including Elvira, who was a big fan of this.
Including Elvira, absolutely. That's the important thing. You got to get Elvira over.
All right, let's talk about 3. First of all, Coliseum home video again after the fact, or when did you get to watch this one?
So WrestleMania 3 did air in closed circuit at the Vancouver PD Coliseum in Vancouver. So I could have went to it, but my dad was unable to take me. He had stuff going on.
How far from that were you growing up?
I lived in a city called Maple Ridge for the most part. So I was close enough to where we could go there. Like we went, we did end up actually going for later WrestleManias.
Did you go see Pavel Bure play there?
I did not have a chance to go see Pavel Bure there. Canucks tickets are hella expensive, and unfortunately, I was never an active hockey fan until till later on. So by the time Pavel Bure became a big thing,
Ricky Steamboat, Pavel Bure is one of them. But okay, for another time. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. So
that's all right.
You were able to go to closed circuit. You could have, but
I could have, but no, we did not. My friends at school, this was like the talk of the school, of course, was WrestleMania 3.
Mm-hmm.
People losing their minds for it, especially Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man Randy Savage, right? Like Macho Man dropping the bell on Ricky Steamboat was another formative thing in my wrestling youth, right? Like it's the big 3 really, and they all came this show. Orndorff turning on Hogan, Macho Man dropping the bell on Ricky Steamboat, and then of course Adrian Adonis and the attack on Roddy Piper, and then his who I'll be talking about later, but his revenge against Adrian Adonis was the things that hooked me as a fan forever, basically during that time period. So this was a big one for my life.
Adrian Adonis grew up about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting now. For me, WrestleMania 3 was everything. One of the top 4 things that happened in my life before 18. Like as a child, when you think of my childhood, tell me something great about it. I'm going to say the Karate Kid. I'm going to say the A-Team. And I'm going to say WrestleMania 3. Like in terms of pop culture, especially non-music, those were the things. My grandfather was my nono. He was an old, mean, tough Italian guy, but he loved wrestling. And I could talk to him about wrestling, and he listened to me in a way I couldn't find anything else with him. And we watched the Superstars together, I think it was Superstars, where they taped the angle where Steamboat is basically Savage attempts murder on syndicated television, and we followed that feud. That's all that mattered to me and Hulk a little bit going into 3. And I had my mom, we ordered the pay-per-view. We went and got a special box, and all my friends were over. And right before the Steamboat Savage match, the pizza came, and we couldn't eat the pizza in the living room. Oh. And my friends were like, well, we're going to go eat the pizza. So I was the only one in the living room watching, and I would run back and forth every once in a while, give them an update on the match. And then when Steamboat won, obviously I marked out in the most maximum possible way. A 6-year-old, my reaction was, off the charts. I was running around my house and telling my friends to come see. And it's the greatest match of all time. For me, it will always be the greatest match of all time. It's, what are they up to now? It's 5 stars, but I think he gave out 7. So to me, it's 7 stars, whatever scale you want to use. To me, it's at the top of that. It's 15 minutes and 35 seconds. They don't waste a second of that.
No.
The pacing is incredible. The false finishes aren't wasteful, although they're abundant. Steel is used, not too much, but just enough. Jesse is on fire. Gorilla balancing it off. Everything I love about pro wrestling is on display in these 15 minutes. The one spot where Steamboat slides under Savage, hits the arm drag, then slides back under and hits the arm drag again. And Gorilla's like, oh, those arm drags of the dragon. Every time I watch this match, I have to watch that part like 6 times before I'm ready to move on, because I just love it. When he grabs Savage by the throat and holds him up, but then he remembers my best revenge is to win the title, and he throws him down. And
that's absolutely, that's a very underrated part of the match as well, which is, it's hard to say that any part of that match is underrated, but yeah, exactly. Right. That was the whole storyline leading up to the match after the throat injury was Steamboat doing the house show circuit, and he would get frustrated and get disqualified because he wanted to kill Savage so much. And that's kind of a forgotten thing leading into that, was that, that was the big thing was, can Ricky Steamboat control his temper?
It's his last
Randy Savage. This is his last opportunity. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And Justin from the North-South Connection doesn't give it 5. And his criticism, is that Steamboat doesn't wrestle aggressive enough based on what Savage has done to him. And he misses the point that Steamboat has realized that the best revenge he can get on Savage is to take away what Savage loves the most. And it's not Elizabeth. It's the belt. It's the Intercontinental belt. And Savage does a great job after losing it of crying on the, putting his head down and selling the fact that he just had the thing he loved the most taken away from him. And they do a great job telling the story that obviously got cut off after the fact, where, on the one defense Steamboat has against Hercules on Saturday's main event, Macho is there because he wants to be the one to get that belt back from Steamboat. So I think they do a great job, short term, long term, and of course on this night, like again, it's Andre and Hogan drew the house, and Steamboat and Savage stole the show. Yeah, and they put on, to me, the greatest wrestling match of all time. I know other people like others better. That's fine. Number 2 for me, just for context, is Brett and Austin at 13. Just maybe so you can see where I'm at in terms of what else I put in high regard like that. Yeah. But to me, this is the greatest. And I really do believe that, if this is all he had on his WrestleMania resume, he would have to be in the top 32, because I just think his impact. And again, like at WrestleMania 3, this set the standard for what a WrestleMania moment would be going forward.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, this was the first match at this level in terms of getting 15 minutes and if people who are into work rate and things like that. And I think it combines everything I love about wrestling. That's my gushing. You want to gush on it for a minute or two? Go ahead before we move on.
Absolutely. It's I can't argue with anybody who'd count it as the greatest match of all time. WrestleMania 3, of course, was the one that set the, WrestleMania 1 and 2 were kind of, the baby steps for it. WrestleMania 3 was, the big stadium, and it was the pay-per-view presentation, and, just Vince McMahon going out and just flexing on the world, basically. And, defining what we think of a WrestleMania as since then, even though the next few didn't necessarily live up to it. But and kind of my favorite story about the match that's been told before is how obsessive Randy Savage was about it, because he was pre-planning, and like they built it for weeks, and they would work out little spots within the match leading up to it, right? And sitting on the plane beforehand going to the match, and Randy Savage would be calling out numbers, and like number 25 arm drag, like number 28 reverse into the ropes, and like all this stuff to the point where they had it down to a science by the time they finally got there in the ring.
And I love how they sort of knew too that the close calls were going to be on each other. Yeah. That if they didn't get out of it, the match might end, right? That they were good. And they used Hebner specifically because they thought they had the best rhythm with him in terms of that, and the Dragon has said, like, there's a couple I got out of there at the last second. And if I would have got out, I would have had to have been pinned. And they had that drama built into it internally, almost as challenging themselves as athletes. But yeah, unbelievable job. Again, my favorite, my number 1 on every scale. And I watch it several times. I watch it a few times a year.
Yep. It's by far my most rewatched match. I think. Yeah,
It makes
and
me happy.
every moment of it burned into it. George Steele pushing him off the top rope and then celebrating with Steamboat afterwards because finally Steele, after losing so many times to Macho Man, find a way to get his revenge, right? Like he threw his friend Ricky Steamboat,
and he has to put him on his back to get him to the thing. Again, Steamboat used everything he had to win that match. Every detail they put into it pays off. It's so good, and I feel bad for people who either don't get it or don't want to get it because they're so dug in on, and I'm probably guilty of this about some match too, where I'm so dug into the opinion that this is the best that I can't appreciate maybe something else. There's other people like that too. They're so dug into it has to be Taker versus Shawn or whatever that they couldn't possibly want to even understand why this might or could be better. And again, I could be guilty of that as well. But unbelievable sports entertainment, any way you want to put it.
For sure.
The next year, I remember as a kid looking at those brackets and saying, wow, could you imagine
The
if
rematch.
these guys are wrestling again?
Yeah.
And I understand why they didn't do it. I do. I understand splitting I was at WrestleMania 6, and I seen what happens when the building is split, like it was for Hogan and Warrior. In my last video, I talked about the biggest pop that night was Demolition, because when Warrior won the belt, half the people groaned and half the people cheered, so it didn't get the reaction. Yeah. So I understand why they didn't want to split it on Randy's night. I wish they would have. I wonder what that would have looked like. That's one of my great what ifs as a wrestling fan. Just what would those guys have done that night? How would that have looked? But I think that Ricky does a great job with Valentine here. I think they have a really good, they get 9 minutes and 12 seconds. That it's Meltzer again. I don't understand. He's a star lower than the Bourne match. I think it's a star better. I think they do a great job. I think they take advantage of their time. I think it's one of the best, if not the best match in the tournament. I think that it's a fantastic for what it is. If I had to watch either the Matt Bourne match or the Greg Valentine match in a vacuum, I'd probably watch the Valentine one. 2.25 for Meltzer, 3 for Canton, and 2.75 for George. Where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, I think I'm at about 3. WrestleMania 4, that was one where I saw at the closed circuit in the Coliseum. Yeah. So you're there for that one. My friends at school, us wrestling nerds, were, endlessly, doing our own booking of the tournament and the brackets. Right. And we were trying for the rematch as well, but didn't happen. But yeah, Greg Valentine and Ricky Steamboat obviously had great chemistry. They were together forever in Crockett and, worked tons of matches together, and they knew exactly how to have a good match. And that's what this was. And it was, not the most memorable match of Ricky Steamboat's run, but it, didn't have to be. Steamboat obviously not on great terms with WWF for most of this time, but so it is what it is. But I enjoyed it. Considering how many times I've seen WrestleMania 4, it's one that I enjoy watching for sure.
Yeah, the paternity leave ask and where that left Vince and how that affected it wasn't good for his career, Steamboat, at all.
No.
And of course the marriage didn't work out. I've heard him say it many times, he wishes that maybe he didn't, I don't think he regrets being there for his child, but maybe they could have worked something out that would have worked for everyone. But Steamboat's wife wanted what Steamboat's wife wanted at the time. And tough time for him. But again, I think just in terms of the work and I was crushed when he lost, as a
we were so disappointed with that.
Yeah. He was one of the guys I thought could win it. To me, it was like, if he can get by Savage, when I was fantasy booking in lunch, when we were fantasy booking in the schoolyard, it's like whoever wins that Savage Steamboat match is going to have a really great chance to win the whole thing, depending on what happens with Hulk and Andre.
Yeah.
Not to be. Now, as a Labs fan, for years, I had a friend who would say, hey, this guy's coming back. Will you watch? Hey, and I would always say to him, when Steamboat comes back, I'll watch. So I got the call one day frantically. Dude, you're not going to believe it. Steamboat's wrestling at WrestleMania. So there I was a few weeks later at the Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever for Ricky Steamboat and Jimmy Snuka versus Chris Jericho. Wasn't there 3 guys?
Yeah, Roddy Piper was in there as well.
Oh, yeah, his name is not listed here, but I thought it was 3 versus Jericho. Handicap elimination match, 8 minutes and 33 seconds, 2 for Meltzer, 2 for Canton, and 3 for Aaron George. Here's what I'll say about this match. Steamboat stole the show. He absolutely dazzled the crowd. The things he did that night, considering where he was in terms of age, and he's an older guy, Steamboat. He just had a birthday the other day, and he's turned like, I was like, wow, he's that old. I forget what it was, 75 or something. He's an older,
he is
well into his 70s individual. For him to do what he did that night, I mean, he dazzled us one last time. You know, it's like, and then because of how great he was, it had legs beyond just WrestleMania.
Yeah, they had a rematch at that Backlash or whatever it was. Yeah,
that
was really good too. Yeah.
To show what a fantastic sports entertainer he was. Again, this is a 3 all day for me. If for nothing else, for Steamboat to come back, 22 years after one of the greatest match of all time, and to perform at the level he did in front of the crowd the way he did, with a fantastic performer in himself and Jericho, and to not miss a beat, man, that's some impressive stuff right there.
Yeah.
Scott?
Yeah, exactly. It was a weird match, of course. I mean, it was like a weird commercial for Mickey Rourke and the wrestler, and Mickey Rourke didn't want to get involved directly and stuff, and so this is what we got. But yeah, no, man, I came out of that one like hella respect for Ricky Steamboat for going out there at his age and putting on, like you say, he stole the show in that one. Like he went out there, and you watch it, and then you're thinking, well, why didn't they just do Ricky Steamboat and Chris Jericho and in the first place then, right?
And they were probably saying the same thing.
yeah, exactly. Like
they were probably all gorillas saying, why didn't we just do Jericho and Steamboat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, hey, you go out there, people thought he was going to embarrass himself, and he did not at all. He still looked fantastic. And yeah, he had a brief, not really a comeback in NXT afterwards with his son in the early days of that as well. But yeah, other than that, he was just never really had any interest in being in the business any further. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up. Let's 32. You think it's fair? You think he should be higher? Where do you think he stands historically as a WrestleMania participant?
I mean, I think obviously having one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history, he definitely ranks in the top 40. I mean, body work overall is, I think 32 is about fine for that. He didn't have a long enough run to be able to be like a top 10 WrestleMania competitor or anything like that. But he's got that Savage match, and that's more than a lot of other people on the list could even claim to have. So yeah, I think he definitely warrants a spot, at least, for sure.
Yeah, again, as a staunch lover of this era and defender of it, I think this is fair. I really do. If he came in, say, at 29, I would say, oh, nice, great. If he came in around 35, I think that's the range. Somewhere in between 29 and 35. I'm sure there'll be a couple after him I disagree with, but you know what? It's fine. It's fair. I'll save my vitriol and vengeance for next year's project if we do matches or something. Yeah. And Ryan rolls in and wants to rank Steamboat Savage at 9. I'll save my anger and my protest for that. But for now,
good for you, man. Yeah,
exactly. For now, I'm happy. I got to spend some time with the great Scott Keith and talk to him about wrestling for a half hour. What could beat it? You know what I mean? So that's it for us. And again, if you're we'll leave you on this. If you don't think or haven't watched Steamboat Savage ever, or you've watched it once or twice, or you don't get it, whatever, watch it again after you watch this, maybe, and think about what we said about it, and who knows, maybe it'll boost you a half a star. And Meltzer, shame on you, you're a dummy, just unbelievable, what a dope. But thank you, Scott.
You're very welcome, man. Always happy to talk about Ricky Steamboat.
We got to talk about Bret Hart matches together sometime.
That'd be fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks, brother.
Okay.
North South. We're on to number 31.